Hey people, I got y'all some gold here. I'm going to read you the death of Aaron, which is an ancient Egyptian story. And in the Greek it's pronounced pollution. And it's an ancient story about the flood. And I'm going to read it to you in the Greek. I know I told you last one that I'll make the next one in the Hebrew, but I'll show you next movie what I ran into that made me do this. But I don't belong to any synagogue, sin together and gog to be led. Nobody leads me. I'm an independent thinker. People on the left think I'm right, and people on the right think I'm left. And I hope I can make everybody independent. I understand you can't vote for independence because you know they're not going to win. So you either have to lean to the right or the left, whatever fits you more. And hopefully we get everybody independent thinking, and we'll have more independent candidates later. Because the majority of people, whether the left or the right, they synagogue, they're together led, whatever hits your airwaves. But, the left, they just know something's wrong. And the right, they just go on with the synagogue. So I don't vote at all. I don't want to feel like I'm a part of it. And I believe that's the trap. They want everybody to have a vote. And that way you'll feel like you was a part of it and go along with whatever outcome is.
The ancient Egyptian gods were cats and raptors, hawks, eagles, and snakes, apods. And I don't think you'll find the owl wearing a crown because it meant it was old. The owl is the Hebrew word for everlasting, and it was the Egyptian for a judgment. When you see the owl, it's talking about you done had a court case, and this is the judgment. This is everlasting law. And the reason for this, if you Google Earth, the Nile over there, you'll see over here at the mouth of the river, zoom in, you'll see this is all garden. This is all planted. And all up in this Nile Valley for thousands of years, it's been the cradle of civilization and surrounded by big old kitty litter boxes. This is all kitty litter over here. And every year at the beginning of the Egyptian year, we started in Virgo, and on the 6th day of Virgo, on August 29th, every year this would all flood. And what was happening is when you're growing all these crops here, the mice are all down here in this valley. But when this flood come up, the mice poured out into Egypt out here on the sands. And they knew that that's what caused disease and death. And they thanked the god of cats and serpents and raptors for getting rid of the mices. And that's where the word mouse come from. Looks like a M-O-U-S-E-S, the mouses. And it comes from the cat. And this actually reads the M-E-O-W. Meow says. And the cat says. Meow is the ancient Egyptian word for the cat. You can see it here, how they put the H in front of it. It's a E-O-R. E-O-R. Whore. The or. And the meow, and the cat says. And so the Greek Bible and the Hebrew Bible, they're totally opposite. And what brought me here is I was looking at the top of the mountains. On the top of the mountains. And I was just curious how the Greek would write that, because in Hebrew it's a brazier, B-R-A-S and an E-E-R, which the second one reads as an I, believe. B-R-A-S-E-I-R, brazier. On the top of the mountain is the brazier. And if you look up brazier, Wikipedia will lie to you, or they just don't know. And they'll tell you bra is short for brazier. They'll tell you it comes from a French word from the 1700s, I believe. But the brazier is ancient British word, Brit, language of the covenant. And you see it comes up many times here in the Bible. And knowing that the Greeks stripped the godship from the women and they made feminine men gods, I was just curious as what they would did with the brazier over here. And that's why I read this about when Moses it seduced Aaron. And it's written a little different in the Septuagint. This is a later Greek model. In the Septuagint, this death of Aaron, which is down here, a plute, and air. A double A reads as a AI, the Aaron, and pollute Aaron. But you can see how they left Moses out here at its seducing. And you'll see this word they say means to take off your clothes a couple of times here. Ekdus and inducing and it's seducing and we've adducing. And it's where your word reduce comes from. And when it's seducing, it's lowering its robe. So a lizer, is the old hazard on. It's a hazard on. And this word for garments, it comes from a hem at you and of toe. You see, when a lady is walking across the mud, she'll reach down and pick up her dress of toe. She'll pick it up. And it's because this word for the garment, it was a hemet, the hemet of toe. To pick up the bottom of your dress is what that means. A hemation, is a long garment. And so the problem was, when the river rose, all the rats come out the valley and they come into the city. And you're out there in the desert, there ain't no trees, nothing to hide under. If you're wearing a long garment, them rats will run right up underneath your dress, and the snake and the cat are going to try to chase them up underneath your dress. And so it was a hazard on. And so the mouses, it seduce it on the air on to him at you of toe. The mouses cause it. The mouses cause you to strip up your dress, to pick up your dress, to air it out. The mouses, it seduce it on the air on to the hem at you of toe. To pick it up and not when, the N sandwich in the E's, reads as a V. We've inducing, to induce is to put it in, and to seduce is to take it off, and to reduce is to lessen. And we've reduced it in of two, and the L, followed by the E. I believe it's like the Hebrew, the L followed by the A reads as the N. You see that often in the E replaces the A in the Greek. And in hazard on. And so have a deucin of to in hazard on when of toe. And so you're reducing the hazard by picking up your dress, and the mouses is seducing you into induce it on. But let me go up here and read this from the start. And it should look like this. Line 22 starts it, and it's separate to get you started, and then goes to one big story here to the end. So I don't believe there's too many letter shifts in here. The main one is this N. When it's followed by the E, it becomes a V. And it's where the word Vic comes from, and they departed from. That's where that's coming from. And Vic is your father pointing at the door, and it doesn't actually mean from. It means to, go to somewhere else. I don't care where you go. Vic, out the door, And that's where they're getting this, and they departed from. And of here, of Vic, get out of this place. And you'll see it again in here, this isn't air on, it's where, W-A-I-R, and where of in. And then the oi I believe this means oi or I, me, and the I-O reads as a E. And this is, as in a V-E-Y or a W-H-Y, Y. And the or here, this is the or of Ra. And so the or to arose, when you're pulling in a port, and you give the call, and raise oars, the or to arose, it means pull it into port. And they departed and they pulled in. But the oar, that's Ra. Ra steers the boat. That's what God planned. Ra is driving the boat. When Ra's not on the boat, you always see his head on the oar, and it means it's the way God wills it, in the oar. It's the way God steered it. And then this EIPE, if you've been watching my channel, you remember I found in an old Dutch German dictionary, and it's pronounced as the S, E-I-S-E, and it's wise, and you often see it followed by the N, wise in, and it meant what we use our word wise today, knowledgeable. And so in end of here of Vic Cades, and Cades, this is the Kadesh, that's the holy, but it's also the east in the Hebrew. And it means, the feed. It is spelt with the QD in the Hebrew, and it feeds. Means, all the feed comes from east. You watch the stars rise in the east, and it's a cadence. It means, right on time. It came in on time. The Cades, and so, and of here, Evic Cades means coming from the east, and so if you're in Egypt, that means they're coming out of the Nile River. And here a Vic Cades, and a foraging onto, and come up a eating, foraging onto. And and my way is real. And real is where your word real estate comes from. Real estate means what's above ground, is above. And my way is above. And so they're coming up out of the Nile Valley and forging on to my way is above. Israel means Egypt. And a passage, the way in. The passage, a synagogue, this together, and a lead. They shore, S-H-O-R, they shore, come to shore to arose. They've all come to shore. And here, the I-O is the E. And often you'll find the Lord spelt with the K-U-R-E, but it's the same, the I-O is the same thing. It's still the E. And it's a cures, and sometimes it's secures. And why secures force motion, and whereof in whore to array, to fan out. The fit on Aryan, this location, Edom legend. In this location, they eat 'em. Edom legend. And a prosthetic to err on, forced on. The pros, that's where your word prostitute come from. Pros is that set of red lips, and the prost, it that to err on, forced on. Forced them to show off their stuff. And the prosthetic to err on, forced on, a lay on of toe, the people who follow you, the people you drag behind, the lay on, a layman, the lay on of toe, at you much, and much means more than you want. And I think they use the same in Hebrew sometimes, But hey, that's too much, slow down. When you're at the dinner table and somebody's trying to get you to eat more of this, and no, I've had too much, your palm is down. You're going too fast, slow down, much. And prosteta to err on, that's where this added come from. They trying to lessen the meaning of the word, but that's where everyone was added. Everybody came from pros, came out of the red lips. The prosteta to err on, forced on lay on, of toe, at of much. His health they stingin', they a stingin' in, deduct. What they don't want to give up is being taken anyway, deduct. The rats come in and they eatin' everything. And deduct too is wise, is real, is above a deity. This is a name for thought, a deity, and it's actually reading as a DE here. But the people didn't know that. Most of your scholars, they just say deity. That's thought. And thought for oxen ate. They eat more than oxen, and thought for oxen ate me, if it of would at as this antilogies, against logic. And a lab to nair, Nair, to Nairon. Lab is to take a bath, the laboratory. The lab it to wash it, to nair on. To wash it till there's none on. When when the hazard on, and when of toe, when you're dragging it behind you, and on a vive as on life vival, and on a life as on of to us they shore to arose. And Vic, a Vic Deucin, to induce them, get the hell out. A Vic does on, to get them out. And Vic do so ne'er haunting, none are over your shoulder haunting, and ne'er haunting, stolen of toe, and induce of in the hazard on, when of toe, where on forced it his, having been added to his people. The added comes from this pros, and forced it his. Apada vito, apada, the serpent, an apod, no-footed creature. Veto, rejects. The serpent on the shore, is forced it his, the serpent veto. And not there, but here, eki. And like I say, the K followed by the E reads as a L. The lay, is in that space. Apada veto the lay. And a fees, and is it feasible? Can it be done? A fees, a mouse's catch. And as of a tax, a sin, a tax, is when you got the cat, the mouse says, the cat and the apada both working together. When we get the left and the right all together, then we will cure, the Lord cure. And the catch as of a tax, the cures of two, and of the vive as in, and to survive, the life and of a vive is in, of to us they shore to a rose, in anti on, in against on, passes this. No, you're not coming over this line. They're right up on the shore. They shore to a rose. They're right up on the edge, not on the mountain. They're on the river bank. To a rose in anti on, in prevention, anti venom, to go against, in against on, passes. This synagogue is, this together lead is. And a mouses it seduce it on air on, to him at ya of toe. We've a deucin of two in hazard on, when of toe, and a feet of in, and a feet of in air on. You're lifting up your dress and you're showing your feet. And that was a sin, girls, the foot was the most sensual part of a woman's body and had to keep their feet covered. And so the mouses is seduced it on to air on, to the helm at you of toe, and inducing, the mouses are causing this, inducing of to on hazard on, when of toe, and a feet of in air on, if it is a carry, a festive, a carry festive. Everybody's carrying their dress around. It's just a festival for all of us that are just getting off on looking at naked feet. A carry festive arose. And catawba, the catawba tree, the catawba worm never goes up. He's born in the tree and always comes down, never goes up. And Kate, is to execute, to begin, to carry out the orders, to Kate in come of says. The Kate in come of says, when, W-E-N, when has erect of arouse. I done seen your naked feet is when has erect of arouse. And it aroused me. I have an erection. The mountain. And hide. H-I-D-E. Not saw, but I see your feet, hide them. And hide a passage. A synagogue. Together led. Had he pollute the air on, and the claws on to Nairon. The clause on, that's a stipulation of the contract. And so this is what it's talking about. It's a stipulation to the law. And the clause on to nair on. We don't want you to air them out. To nair, not on a triconta. The triconta, the 30. The 30 comer. The 30 days after the comer as pass, 30 days after the flood, we're going to allow you of the cause is above, is rule. And so they made a stipulation to the law. The law was woman cannot show her ankles, but the clause in to Nairon, she could never show the hair on your legs, nair, to Nairon. I don't know if they still use that. When I was a kid, you seen that commercial on TV all the time, nair for good legs, and nair on the tricount, the 3 10 days. The comer as past, the comer, the days as past, the days after. The cause is rule. The cause is above. So the story above is telling you why they have written a clause. And so in these days, all laws come from God, and that's what it means. All your lawyers were the astrologers. In order to write law, it had to come from the stars. And the cause is above, is rule. And so the left, I believe that's the serpent, and they know something's wrong, and the kids don't know what to do about it. They're just trying, they're rebelling. And the right, they're a synagogue, and they can't think for themselves. They just follow a gog. They just follow together. Whatever they're told, they go on along with the congregation. And when I get to my next movie, Back to the Hebrew, I'm going to blow their mind. It's about time they wake up. But the book's about astrology. The entire book is about astrology. And that's what the whole first chapter of Genesis is talking about in the Hebrew. It plainly says the Milky Way. The bras it bear as on a tesson. A delicatessen is on a tesson. It hears. The milk. And the way is right here. It comes on the first day. It's the first thing you talk about, way. The IE becomes an A. This is the way, W-A-Y, the way. And that's the first thing it's talking about is the Milky Way. I'm going to cut this off here, and I'll read you what I caught on. Like I say, it's been a year since I've been reading. I come back, and I caught a lot of things. But that's what it is. It's the bras, B-R-A-S, the bras it bear. That's titties. The titties on a tesson. The titties on a tesson. The delicatessen, the delicate foods. The titties on a tesson. The titty foods. Milk. The milk. The Milky Way. I'm going to cut this off here. A good day.